mergers and acquisitions are not equal, there are very different considerations to look at depending on the industry, sector or jurisdictions involved. One factor that perhaps takes up more time than most is regulation, which can scupper even the most synergistic deals, which seem to make the most business sense. Well, let's now meet two senior partners and co-heads of the firm CMS, the sixth largest law firm by headcount in the world. I'm Sarah Lockett. Welcome to the Business Debate. Charlie and Ian, welcome to the London Stock Exchange studios.
Thanks very much for having us.
Thanks very much.
So Ian, I'll get to you in one moment, but Charlie, first of all, what are the most tricky sectors to complete M&A deals in regulation-wise?
So really it's energy, pharma, financial services, tech and media. So it's really the heavily regulated sectors. They're really for protection of consumers, protection of natural resources. So they're really the key ones that we find there are issues in terms of addressing your way through those markets.
And in the energy sector, in particular, a lot of energy companies, oil and gas businesses are deemed national assets. Now, how does that complicate things for you?
You really need to understand what the protections are that each government is seeking to put in place and really help clients navigate through that. It is quite different in different sectors, but it's definitely been a very buoyant sector for us as a firm.
Does there tend to be any wiggle room, or do you just have to find a way to comply with what you're told to comply with?
I mean, really, you've got to really understand how the regulation is actually applied. If you sometimes just look at it sort of written down, it can look quite stark. So actually one of the keys as an advisor is having that experience, that expertise to really be able to guide clients through what actually applies in practice.
And it must be different case by case, but what are the main ways that you overcome regulatory challenges?
As I said, Sarah, it's really about understanding them. I mean, that's obviously fundamental to being able to work through them. I mean, we find certainly, say, in Eastern Europe, where if you just looked at the legislation and didn't understand how it was actually applied in practice, sometimes it can look quite scary. I did a transaction where our colleagues said for an airport, the law said the government could take back the airport at any point, just asserting national security. But in practice, our colleagues said, well, no, actually, they will never do that unless there's, outbreak of war. So it really is about understanding how it works in practice, understanding the regulator's approach, understanding how government will apply. Clearly, at the moment, as I say, as we're seeing more protectionism, there are concerns, I think, for investors around certain geographies where, and we've seen, for example, sort of Chinese bidders finding it difficult to invest in certain industries in certain countries.
And surely you must know fairly on that this deal is not going to be allowed to happen in this form. Shall we just give up?
That actually happens fairly seldom, I have to say. I mean, certainly you see certain deals where you can see there are competition or regulatory issues. Clearly, at the moment, the sort of bid for Sky has run into some competition issues. But I would say 99% of the time, there is a way for lawyers to help clients guide them through that process. Ultimately, our job is to advise clients on risk and how to mitigate that risk. But ultimately, the commercial decision is really for them. OK, well, Charlie, I'll leave you for the moment and come on to Ian, who's been waiting patiently there. Now, you do 2 surveys a year on M&A activity. So which sectors and countries are hot at the moment and why?
So, yeah, we publish a European M&A report and an Emerging Europe survey, both looking at M&A in those territories. At the moment, TMT, technology, media and telecoms, is a very hot sector. Real estate and hotels, energy and infrastructure. And in terms of countries, UK is still the most active in terms of deal making, followed probably by Germany, France and Scandinavia.
And do you see sort of trends really diverging or going in opposite directions, or do they all tend to be moving to active or not active?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in different sectors, not so much, but in some of the territories there are different drivers. In the Middle East, Saudi is diversifying away from oil, so that is having an impact on our Middle Eastern practice. In terms of the US and Europe, they're both low interest rate environments with strong economies that are getting stronger. So there's quite a lot of deal activity as a result of that. And the UK is still doing well, despite Brexit looming towards us.
Well, you've mentioned Brexit, but what do you make of M&A activity in the UK booming despite the Brexit vote?
Well, as I say, at the moment, it's still a low interest rate environment. It's still lots of finance available. There's PE funds and other funds and corporates are awash with cash. Brexit is still too far away and too uncertain for people to understand what the impact might be. So people are just getting on and doing deals, really.
And there are lots of different reasons for mergers and acquisitions. They could be trying to gain geographical territory, they could be defensive. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, there are different drivers, but they're not particular to sectors really, or particularly in countries. There are different drivers on each deal, whether that's to do with the participants, the particular economy, or the sector in which the businesses are operating. And
just for either of you to answer, really, China is a huge investor internationally. What do you see happening there in the near future? Do you think that will just continue, or will protectionism block it?
I think what we're seeing is they're still investing in kind of natural resources and technology to gain those. I think there's probably been a slight reduction in outward investment by China, but there's a lot of inward investment into China. I think that's going to continue. Frankly, the rate of growth of their economy means it's almost inevitable.
Well, gents, thanks very much for coming in to tell us all about that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And join us next time when we'll be discussing the latest innovations in Islamic finance and healthcare technology. But for now, from me, Sarah Lockett, at the London Stock Exchange studios, it's goodbye and thanks for watching.